So I thought I would make a video in the name of not neglecting this channel too much. I wanted to talk about some of the anxiety of the Enneagram 6, and specifically I thought I would talk about some things that I as a 6 at core specifically anxious about. Like what kind of things can come up for the 6 and that come up for me that give me a sense of anxiety and that I'm almost like consciously anxious about, because I think a lot of times our Enneagram type is sort of unconscious and it gets expressed and we don't always recognize it when it gets expressed, funnily enough. It's kind of difficult to explain that. I'm not a complete expert on this, so I can't kind of talk about all the psychological mechanisms of it in terms of why and how exactly these things happen. But I know my own experience and I know enough about the Enneagram that I can kind of touch on this at least a little bit in the way that I can do on this channel, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of times we think of 6s as, it is like one of the fear types or the anxiety types, and it's probably the type that is most obviously correlated with fear and anxiety, but it doesn't always express itself in a very obvious way. But there are things that I'm very consciously anxious about, and I thought I would kind of flesh it out, like how some of these things, like how I get anxious about certain things and what those things might look like. What are those things? So one is traveling. So I've done a little bit of traveling. Specifically, I've gone to one specific country quite a few times. Even though I'm familiar with the country, even that gives me a lot of anxiety, because I think there is this thing about 6s with their comfort zone, right? So sometimes you're sitting in your comfort zone and then you come out from under your rock, or you come out from under from your comfort zone, and you go out and travel, and you go into the airport, or you go on long trips, and you have to meet people that you haven't maybe seen for a while. And so for whatever reason, that can fill me personally with a very 6-ish anxiety. So going through airports, sometimes even getting on the train, even sometimes getting on the bus, like it can be, there's something about it that like, wow, I'm entering the world. It sounds so stupid. It sounds so funny, but like, it's like I'm entering the world now, and I have to like do all these things that are taking me out of my comfort zone, even if it is something as simple as just taking an hour train ride to the capital city, which I'm fine with most of the time. But I specifically remember, maybe I've grown in this way, but I specifically remember like years ago when I was younger, I would get anxious about getting on the train or getting on the bus, especially to like the capital or like a longer journey. And now it's getting less. I'm getting like less anxious about it, but there is still a bit of anxiety there on some level. And definitely getting on the plane or just going through airports, and as much as that can be, I don't want to say exhilarating, but as much as that can be, I mean, I have a 7 wings, so I have that kind of thirst for adventure to some degree. So I kind of want to say exhilarating, like it can be a little bit exhilarating, kind of the idea of just going through airports and that I'm going traveling and I'm doing all these things, and that I'm going to see all these people that I haven't seen for a while and having conversations and stuff like that. But there's still so much anxiety, like even when I'm excited. This is probably a common thing, and 6 is a very common type for people to have in their trifix, right? There's a lot of 6s, there's a lot of people who have 6 somewhere in their trifix. So a lot of people who relate to this is that like, even if it is really exciting to go to this place and travel to this place, right? There's still a sense of anxiety that is there at the same time. It's like mixed feelings, right? And you're kind of ping-ponging. Like I'm nervous, but I'm excited, and then I'm nervous, and then I'm excited. I can't sleep very well the night before. Maybe maybe even physically, I can feel myself physically anxious. Maybe in some parts of my body, I can feel like this tension or this shaking or this anxiety, just with the thought of going to the airport now, and I have to like go through security and like go through the airport and just, be among a lot of people on the plane, in the airport as well. There's a sense of like existential, it sounds so funny, but like there's a sense of like existential dread almost. There's some kind of existential anxiety with airports and with, going up in the air and being on a plane and seeing the earth, seeing the cities from like up there. And I'm in a situation where I might be going somewhere later this year, and it's somewhere that I've been to many times, but it's like there's still a sense of, it's like I'm thinking ahead already. I'm thinking ahead about like I'm gonna be too anxious to go or something. It's like I'm already anxious about being anxious or something like that. It's that statement that sometimes they say about sixes as well, that there's like a fear of fear. So I might be completely fine once the time comes, but it's that fear of the fear. It's like the fear of the anxiety coming that doesn't allow me to relax about the situation even months before, And, with this kind of ties into another point when it comes to traveling. I might be anxious about it just in general, losing things, or like I have that classic six tendency that I've heard other sixes talk about, is that like when I leave the house, I'm double checking, maybe less nowadays because I've grown in my sixness a little bit, but definitely a few years ago, I would do this all the time. Like I would check my pockets, I would double check, triple check. Do I have my phone? Do I have my keys? What if I, forgot to put this thing into my bag and things like that? It's like six has that like attunement to what might go wrong, and even if you're not consciously aware that like it's just fear and it's just anxiety, for you it might just feel like it's just preparation. That like, okay, I'm just preparing myself, or I'm making sure that I'm ready in case I did forget some item that I might need. But what the six needs to remember, I think, and what I need to remember as a six, is that like, even if you did forget something, like there's ways around that. You have to deal with situations as they arise. So even if I did forget my phone, or I forgot something that maybe isn't super important, but it is important, like I can maybe borrow somebody else's item, or I can, there's other things that I can do without that thing. Of course, if I'm going to the airport, and I don't have my documents, then, that is not great. There might be no alternative for that. But if I forget something that, I forget my laptop or something, then, I can use somebody else's, or I can, have it sent to me or something like that. So there's usually other like things that can come up as you go through life. So if you forget something, sometimes it is about relaxing into that maybe 9-ish space where you're thinking, well, okay, well, maybe if I forgot this thing, like, okay, well, there's other ways around that. I can do something else to have that experience, or like do that thing. I don't need to necessarily always be so prepared. And I think for a lot of people, it would actually be beneficial for them to be more six-like, in the sense of being prepared, or making sure like that they have their I's dotted and their T's crossed, and that they have their laptop with them, and they have their documents with them, and they have their phone and their keys with them, and to double check things and not be airy-fairy about it. But I think for the six, is because the six has like a fixation around these things. For the six, it does well to try to do the opposite. So actually relax about things, right? And go into that 9 space. So that line to 9, if you want to use those terms, go into that 9 space of like, well, I can just float a little bit through life. I can flow a little bit, and like opportunities will come and options will come. So even if I forget something, I can use somebody else's, or it's not the end of the world usually. But the 6 is so focused on like what can possibly go wrong, or what might happen. So they might kind of like catastrophize I would say. So it's like they can't help but think, well, okay, do I have this? Do I have that? Double check everything and triple check everything, because it's their fixation. It's like they can't easily let go of that. But I've noticed that like when I have certain times when I come out of that and I go into that 9 space of like, well, I don't mind if something goes wrong, or I don't care, because life is life, and it's like I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to have everything with me or double check everything that I have, that I have, triple check everything. Like there's no need to do that. Like sometimes I go into those headspaces as well, where I'm thinking that like, well, maybe I don't need to have everything, perfectly, prepared. As a 6, my particular type of 6 that I am, I also get anxious about social situations. So I think what is related to that is this attunement. Maybe because I'm a social dominant, social 6, so I'm attuned to like what other people are doing or what they're thinking. So it's kind of like if you're attuned to those things, you can't help but feel like, well, if I do this thing or say this thing, then there's going to be some kind of like reaction or backlash, or like what I'm doing has some kind of like effect, and like what other people are doing also has some kind of effect. So some 6s, like who are social dominants, maybe they will actually like even maybe be worried about other people doing certain things, so that like even if they're not doing anything like wrong, but they see somebody else doing something, so they might be anxious for that person. Like maybe that person's going to get in trouble, like even if it's nothing to do with me, if that makes sense. But if it is something to do with me and something that I'm doing, like I usually get anxious about, well, did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Like there is a certain level of social anxiety that comes with the 6 or with the social 6. And again, it's things that have improved over time, I would say. But certainly when I was younger, let's say when I was at school, I was very anxious about like every social interaction, every social situation. I would just go into my head and like overthink it all. Because there's like a tension, like what if I do the wrong thing, or what if I say something stupid or something. And so I still have anxiety about certain social situations, but it's a bit maybe more refined, if that makes sense, or it's maybe focused in different areas. So it's definitely still there, but it's not as extreme, I would say. But I would just think, that's another kind of relatable 6 thing that might be applicable to a lot of 6s, especially like social instinct 6s, maybe like, that you have this kind of social anxiety. And actually another thing I thought of that I have been anxious about a lot is that like things breaking, right? So especially if like technology and stuff like that, because technology like laptops, phones, like my Kindle, like TVs, like they can be quite expensive, obviously. And so it's like on some level I'm already like planning how I'm going to like buy those things like in the future. I'm kind of like calculating in my head sometimes about, well, I've had my laptop for 4 years, so it probably has like maybe no more than 2 years left on it. Or my TV is there, you see my TV, it's like 4 years old, so like it's getting to it's already like shutting itself off sometimes and things like that. So it's getting like older, and like, so my phone is fine, but like there's other things like that, like technological things, and like whenever things like break, or when things are not operating like at a sufficient or optimal like level, it like that can, in some 6s, and certainly in my case, like that can actually also be a source of anxiety. And it's so interesting with 6s because some 6s are like a ball of anxiety, like a ball of nerves. Some 6s are not, like I say, very obviously anxious, but they would still be driven by anxiety in some way. So like there's probably other little things like that, or even smaller things that I could mention about, things that, I haven't planned this video very adequately, so I didn't come up with a whole big list of things that I'm anxious about as a 6, but I've mentioned kind of some of the bigger ones. Let's see if there's anything else like smaller. So like, yeah, things breaking, traveling, like losing things. Do I have everything? Social situations. Also, I would say like this is another big one actually, like things in the news. I think especially as a social 6, like things that are like happening around me or happening in the world it can be very, like 6 is very existential type in a way. They have this kind of existential dread and existential anxiety. Maybe because I also have like 9 in the trifix. It can be hard to deal with like experiences of like a certain like events happening, like big events happening in the news or in the world, or certain conflict situations. And I do have that connection to 9, and I have that 9 in the trifix. So it can be maybe something to do with that as well. I would imagine, a 6 with an 8 fix might be more into just like able to kind of push against whatever's happening and not let it like get into your own headspace, if that makes sense. So maybe some 6s with an 8 fix, they might be able to just kind of not tune it out, but able to just be like more steady and solid in that. Whereas someone like me, with like the 9 fix, I find it incredibly like overwhelming if there's like a lot of news, like negative stuff in the news, which is all the time. Like if I'm looking at it too much, it's just overwhelming. And I think because I am like a social 6, and like I want to know things in general, like I will look at the news and I will like read news, but if I read too much of something, or if there's too many negative pieces of information coming in, if I'm kind of reading a bit too many negative things, or just like overwhelming things about like really big issues, that's when I get confused and that's when I get overwhelmed. So I have to kind of pace myself. I have to kind of limit how much I actually take in, because I know that for my own like for the sake of my own like sanity, I have to be mindful about how much I actually consume. And even another thing that I get anxious about is like, if let's say if there's people arguing or fighting like around me, like not necessarily like in the news, but in my vicinity, because I think that's maybe something again to do with the 9 fix, is that like because I have the 9 fix, I feel like it's almost like that something bad is going to happen, like something terrible is going to happen if like somebody is having certain kinds of interactions around me or something, or with me even, like that it's kind of breaking that connection or something. And with 6, if we're not talking about 9, but if we're talking about 6, then it might be more that like you feel that like you're somehow going to be blamed, or you're going to be like, there's definitely an anxiety about that as well, about being like blamed or persecuted, or because the 6 is so existentially aware and like anxious and like alert to everything. So they can be just incredibly like vigilant and like looking around what's happening. And so if somebody like comes towards you, hey, you did this, like that can shake us just up completely. So there is definitely an anxiety about that. But this is getting quite long now, but I thought I would give some of the like, I hope I did an okay job. I could have maybe given some more advice maybe, but at least I kind of talked about some of the relatable things maybe that 6s can go through. I think there's a lot of different conversations that can be had around this, like how we can, as 6s, or how as you, as if you're somebody who's like supporting a 6 or something, you're not a 6 yourself, but somebody who is, then like there's a lot of different ways that like they can be supported in these things, and how not to be so anxious about these things. And a part of it is kind of going into that 9 and just kind of relaxing, like maybe meditating and like thinking, well, sometimes things actually take care of themselves, that you don't need to always like prepare or over prepare, or like check everything, triple check, double check, quadruple check everything. Like sometimes things actually do work out, and for some types, like the 9, sometimes they have to get away from that mindset a little bit, right? Because they can fall asleep easily. But the 6 falls asleep in the sense that they forget that actually, for them, it is actually beneficial to remember and realize that like sometimes things do take care of themselves, and like you don't have to like over imagine like all the possibilities, or like over prepare. Yeah, I'm glad I made this another video on this channel. So if you like this, leave a like and subscribe if you want more from me, and comment if you have any thoughts or advice about this. Leave me your thoughts. So thank you for watching.